Hi everybody, I'm Skip Alzheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show, where we watch old 16mm films, and that was a short that was ultimately from the Mogul Brothers collection, but via the Prelinger Archive, and we digitized that for the Prelinger Archive. And it was part of the series called Queerosities, which was kind of a newsreel type of thing. And one of the Queerosities is women's softball. So it's not really, it's strange what they decide to say, like, oh, we're going to capture this. I think it's like they had footage of it and they're like, oh, well, we'll just market it as this. Which is interesting about that baptism is the assembly line of, like, boom, they get dunked, and then boom, boom, they just like kind of firemen carry or firemen line, get them out of the water and get the next person in. And it's really was kind of interesting. Anyways, I'm back. I had a miserable head cold, and I think it's not gotten into my lungs, which I hope I don't, because I get bronchitis. But also, my medical problem kind of resurfaced in a way, and so I'm just going to reiterate: do not, if you're getting a bike for a kid, do not get one that has a crossbar. Do not. I don't care if there's boys' bikes that have the crossbar and girls' bikes that don't. Don't do it. That's time and the money. I've spent tens of thousands of dollars on this. No. So that's my PSA. All right. It's very windy here, and it's possible we might lose power. So let's learn about wind and what it does. Enjoy.
Do you know what makes this big paddle wheel on the windmill turn? Can you tell what makes this wheel turn? As the wheel turns, it moves this water pump. The faster the wheel turns, the more water it pumps. By turning the wheel, the wind does work for us. The wind can do work in other ways. It can push a sailboat across the lake, or lift a kite high into the sky. Yes, the wind can do work for us. But how much work it can do depends on the force with which it blows. What is wind? Although we can't actually see the wind, we can see some of the things it does. Here we can see wind blowing away the smoke as it comes out of the chimney. Wind is air that is moving. What causes air to move? This pinwheel spins like the wheel on a windmill. When air blows against it, the force of the moving air turns the wheel. Now watch the wheel. What makes the pinwheel turn when it's held over the burning candle? It must be the force of air pushing against the wheel. But where does the moving air come from? Does heat have something to do with it? Instead of a candle, let's try something else that is hot. This time, we'll use an electric hot plate. These electric coils make the air above the hot plate very warm. Now, when we hold our pinwheel over the hot plate, it turns again. If we take it away, it stops turning. This shadow photograph of the hot plate will help us explain why. It actually shows the heated air moving upward. Now, can you tell what makes our pinwheel turn? It turns because the heated air that we have just seen moving up acts just like wind. The heated air moves against the wheel, forcing it to spin round and round. We can see that warm air moves up, while cool air moves down to replace the warm air. In the same way, the air above our Earth behaves like the air above the hot plate. Warm air moves up, and cool air moves down. Now suppose that you could look at our Earth from far out in space. You would see that it was round like a ball, surrounded by a layer of air. Because the rays of the sun, shining on the Earth, are more direct at the equator than at the north or south poles, the Earth becomes warmer at the equator than at the poles. In this way, the air above the equator becomes warmer than the air above the Earth's poles. This means that the warm air above the equator will move up, away from the Earth, while the cool air above the Earth's poles will move down toward the Earth. In this way, a current of air moves above the Earth, and this moving air is what we call wind. This is how the currents of air above the Earth would look if the Earth were not spinning. But remember, our Earth is spinning in space, and this spinning causes the currents of air to move about something like this. This is why, in certain parts of the world, steady winds blow in the same direction most of the time. Long ago, sailing ships took advantage of these regular winds to carry them across the oceans. Because the force of the wind is important, we often need to measure wind. One way we can measure the wind is by observing what it does. A light wind barely moves the flag, but a light wind may increase to a stronger wind. The faster the wind, the more powerful it is. Very strong winds are called gale winds. One type of very strong wind is a hurricane. A hurricane is a storm with winds of great force. Another kind of wind which is very strong and dangerous is called a tornado. This narrow, whirling funnel of wind can leave a trail of destruction many miles long. Now, do you see how great the force of the wind can be? We already know something about the force of wind in sailing. Strong winds can cause such huge waves that a ship may have to change its course. Boats and ships must know both the direction and the speed of the wind in order to sail safely. Airplane pilots need to know about the wind too. A strong wind might force an airplane many miles off its course. In order to make proper corrections for the effects of wind, a pilot and his crew must know the speed and direction of the wind when they are flying. Every airport has instruments for measuring the speed and direction of the wind. This instrument is called a wind vane. It shows from which direction the wind is blowing. The wind vane is connected to this scale, which indicates accurately the direction of the wind. This instrument is called an anemometer. It measures the speed of the wind. As the wind spins these cups around, the anemometer registers the speed of the wind on this scale. Knowing about wind helps us forecast the weather, too. The wind moves clouds, and clouds often bring rain or snow. Weathermen use balloons to learn more about winds that blow very high above the ground. As the weather balloon rises, a small radio attached to the balloon sends back signals to the weather station. This information often helps weathermen forecast our weather. The study of moving air, or wind, is important in another way. Sometimes the wind picks up and blows so much sand and dust that we call it a dust storm. Dust storms sometimes entirely cover houses or farms. This is just one of the ways in which the powerful effect of the wind can change the surface of our earth. All of the time, the wind blows somewhere on earth. The force of the wind can do work for us. Wind brings us our weather. Sometimes it can be dangerous, but most of the time it blows gently and refreshingly, bending the branches of trees, or just helping us have fun.
Funny how many of you invoked Wonder Cat in this. I think Wonder Cat did certainly cover this topic, but I think it's the fact that they're probably both aimed at the same age group, although maybe skewed a little bit later. But the same way, the kind of slow, the deliberate dialogue, all that stuff is stuff that is definitely Wonder Cat. But for some reason, because there's not an animated cat who's asking the most inane questions, I'm able to deal with this. I think also the music, too. The music is not... I don't think there was any music in this. But the music in Wonder Cat drives me nuts. So I get it. Here's Space Science, an introduction. Enjoy.
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. Tower.
Roger, tower clear. We're getting a roll program.
After hundreds of years of dreaming about it, we're finally able to really leave our planet and travel into space. We know how Earth looks from space. We know how the moon and many of the planets look up close. We've seen our Milky Way and neighboring galaxies in ways we've never seen them before, from instruments in space. When we leave Earth, when can we say we're in space? Well, we can say that space begins where our atmosphere is too thin to have much effect on things that are moving through it. This is at an altitude of about 60 miles, or 100 kilometers. Space begins here, and then we divide it. Space between Earth and Moon is cislunar space. That's a circle with a radius of about 400,000 kilometers. About 65,000 kilometers from the Moon, lunar space begins. This is where the Moon's gravity becomes stronger than the Earth's. Interplanetary space is all the space the planets move through. It's also called solar space because the sun is the most important gravitational influence here. Interstellar space lies between the stars of our galaxy. And intergalactic space lies between the galaxies. Now, to get into space, you first have to overcome the Earth's gravity. It's easy to do that. You overcome gravity every time you throw a ball. Gravity and air resistance slow the ball until it stops rising. Then gravity pulls it back to Earth. You can make a ball go higher by throwing it with more force. The more force you use, the higher an object will go. You can shoot an arrow much higher than you can throw a ball. You can shoot a bullet higher than an arrow. And a jet will go even higher than a bullet because the great force that propels it is continuous. A jet engine depends on air, but rockets can operate beyond the atmosphere where there is no air. In other words, in space. Rocket engines supply the large continuous force that's needed to overcome gravity for space travel. I can show you what happens to these space vehicles. Let's suppose this saucer represents space, and this metal ball represents a space vehicle. Now, some space vehicles rise into space and then fall back to Earth again. Some stay in space, but follow a path or orbit around the Earth like Skylab does. And some escape the Earth like the Mariner probes to Jupiter and Saturn. But let's start with the vehicles that fall back to Earth. Here's a rocket almost ready to be launched. The final fueling and checking of all the important parts of the rocket is nearly completed. This is the countdown. Nearby are the scientists and technicians who direct the countdown and monitor the flight of the rocket.
4, 3, 2, 1. Fire.
Now the fuel begins burning in the rocket engine. Hot gases rush out of its tail, and the rocket begins to rise. Let's see why. The same force that pushes the gases down out of the rocket pushes up on the inside of the rocket. This upward force is called thrust. If the thrust is great enough, it will push the rocket into space. As the rocket rises, its speed keeps increasing. We say the rocket is accelerating. We can see what happens to an astronaut riding an accelerating rocket by imagining him in an elevator and on a scale. The elevator will provide the acceleration, and the scale will show its effects. Before the elevator starts, our astronaut weighs 157 pounds, or 71 kilograms. The weight is caused by the force of gravity. Watch what happens now as we start moving the elevator up and its motion accelerates, going from 0 to a maximum speed. We'll stop the film while the elevator is still accelerating. Now, notice the astronaut's weight. It's increased from 157 pounds to 259 pounds, or 117 kilograms. That's because the force that causes the acceleration upward also causes an opposite force that pushes downward on the astronaut. This downward force acts like the force of gravity, so it's called a G-force, or gravity force. If the astronaut's weight had doubled, we would say that he was undergoing 2 Gs. During a rocket launching, a space traveler might undergo forces of up to 14 Gs as the rocket accelerates to thousands of kilometers per hour. After its fuel is used up, the rocket continues coasting into space. If the rocket is traveling less than about 30,000 kilometers per hour, the pull of gravity will gradually slow the rocket until it stops rising. Then gravity pulls the rocket back toward Earth again. The rocket leaves space and re-enters the dense part of the atmosphere. As its speed increases, friction with the air makes it get very hot. This heat of re-entry can destroy an object unless it's built to withstand extremely high temperatures. Now, an object will stay in orbit around the Earth if it has the proper speed and direction, the proper velocity. This rocket will place an object into orbit. The rocket is actually composed of several sections or stages. Each stage of a rocket can be powered by one or more rocket engines. At the top, a nose cone protects the satellite. Many satellites, like this one, are now in space, orbiting the Earth. They're called artificial Earth satellites because they travel around the Earth like the Moon does. The Moon is the Earth's natural satellite. For you to see how a satellite goes into orbit, let me use the metal ball and the saucer again. You can see that with a little push, the ball goes up a short distance and falls back to Earth. Now, the harder I push the ball, the farther it travels before it falls to Earth. This time it went nearly halfway around. I can make the ball travel all the way around several times by giving it a sideways motion and a high enough velocity. Now the ball is in orbit. The velocity required for an object to stay in orbit is called orbital velocity. For an object within a few hundred kilometers of the Earth, orbital velocity is about 30,000 kilometers per hour. A rocket that places a satellite into orbit at first rises directly upward. But the direction has to change for the satellite to go into orbit. There are different ways to change the direction of a rocket in flight. Sometimes small rockets attached to the main rocket do it. When one of the small rockets fires, that changes the direction of the main rocket. Another way to change a rocket's direction is to have a pivotal engine. When the engine tilts in one direction, that moves the tail of the rocket in the opposite direction. After a while, all the fuel in the first stage of the rocket is used up. Now the first stage falls away, and the next stage begins operating. Each stage increases the satellite's speed until the satellite is traveling at orbital velocity and moving nearly parallel to the surface of the Earth. Then the nose cone separates from the last stage and splits apart. Then the satellite is released. Now let's stop the ball and the saucer here. If it weren't for the Earth's gravity, a satellite's motion would carry it in a straight line away from the Earth. But because gravity pulls the satellite down toward the center of the Earth, the satellite instead follows a curved path around the Earth. As long as the satellite has the proper velocity, The force of gravity will hold it in orbit, but won't be great enough to pull the satellite back to Earth. The orbit is a closed curve called an ellipse. At this point along the elliptical orbit, the ball has reached its farthest point from Earth. This point is called a satellite's apogee. The point at which a satellite is closest to Earth is called its perigee. As a satellite travels in orbit, it appears to have no weight. To see why, let's look at our elevator astronaut again. Now at the top floor of the building, his weight is again about 157 pounds, or 71 kilograms. Now we're going down. As the elevator accelerates downward, watch what happens to the astronaut's weight. Let's stop the film here at 60 pounds, or 27 kilograms. If the elevator could be accelerated at the same rate as an object falling to Earth, then the scale would indicate that the astronaut's weight had dropped to 0. He would have entered a condition called weightlessness, or 0G. This is exactly the condition that an object is in as it orbits the Earth. Both the object and the people or things it carries are said to be weightless, as these astronauts are in Skylab in orbit around the Earth. A satellite will stay in orbit until friction between the satellite and the air slows its motion down below orbital velocity, and the satellite falls back to Earth. And now, for the space vehicles that leave Earth and don't necessarily come back. For a rocket to escape the Earth's gravitational pull, an engine must be used to give the rocket enough thrust to reach what is called escape velocity. That's about 40,000 kilometers per hour. At this velocity, an object will not go into orbit around the Earth. Instead, it will travel so far into space that other bodies of our solar system begin to exert a stronger gravitational influence than Earth does. By reaching escape velocity, rockets have already sent probes millions of kilometers into space. We've landed on the moon. We've seen the cratered surface of Mercury. We've orbited satellites around Venus, and we've landed instruments on its surface. We've mapped the surface of Mars from orbiting satellites. And with probes that have landed there, we've examined the red soil in a search for life. We've sent probes to Jupiter and on to Saturn. Escape velocity from the solar system itself is about 100,000 kilometers per hour. Once we achieve this velocity, we can send our instruments to other parts of our galaxy. We can reach the stars.
So, some of you said, it seems like that footage is older, and they just added new narration. Certainly, I think that's what they did. In some cases, is they reused some of the animation. And the guy in the elevator, the astronaut in the elevator, did they predict space elevators? Is that going to be what that film is known for? I should say, when I was in college, we would do something where we would take an elevator in our dorm and then as soon as it started going down, we would jump up so that we would kind of free fall. And then boom, when we stopped, which was probably a horrible idea because those elevators were horribly abused. So we probably could have ended up a fatality. All right. Let's go to Tonga and learn about Barkcloth art. Enjoy.
Million years ago, our islands were formed. Once part of ancient Polynesia, the Kingdom of Tonga is where time begins. My name is Anessis Ahuafi, and I'm 12 years old. Today is a very special day. The King and Queen are coming to our church for the first time, and after that there will be a big feast. His Majesty, King Tupu IV, has ruled our kingdom since 1965 with Queen Mataaho. The Kingdom of Tonga is 2,000 miles east of Australia in the South Pacific on the international dateline and is the first country to see each new day. There are 170 islands in the kingdom, and my village is on Tangaimotu, 20 minutes by boat from Nuku'alofa, the capital. My best friend Adelaide and I live in the same village and love coming to Tongatapu, the main island. Sometimes we can see the King and Queen, and the celebration feasts are usually larger than on our island. But very beautiful. It has been home to our family for as long as anyone can remember, and there's everything here we could want. Although I do wonder what it's like to ride in a car. There are 150 people in our village, and I live with my parents, my brother and sister. The islands of Tonga are famous for the special cloth our women make called tapa. And this morning, my mother is working on a large tapa piece as a wedding present for my cousin Fanny. My mother Mele and I are very close and like working together. Tapa cloth is made from the bark of the paper mulberry tree and is often made in very large sheets which later will be cut down and decorated with old family designs. It's used for bedspreads, curtains, hangings, and even traditional clothes, like my cousin will wear for her wedding. My mother says the wedding has been set for 2 weeks from today, and she must work hard to get this piece ready. My father, Daniel, works for the government in the capital as a supervisor in the main market. But today, he wants me to help him harvest more trees for the village tapa making. The paper mulberry trees we use for tapa grow all over the island. My father says we must pick young, tall trees with few knots and branches. This way, the bark will be wide and long and make the best tapa cloth. These trees will be enough for us to make a piece of tapa about 12 feet square. After we strip the bark, we peel away the rough outer layer. My mother says to be extremely careful not to cut the soft inner layer that we'll use to make the tapa cloth. After these long strips of inner bark are soaked overnight, they will be joined into lengths of tapa material. My grandmother, Halmahi, has been doing tapa work for almost 50 years. And she says this afternoon we'll be preparing the tapa my father and I collected. Now that the inner bark is soft from soaking, we beat it until it's about twice its original width. But my grandmother says if we beat it too much, the fibers will break down, weakening the cloth. Where there are holes or flaws in the fibers, we fold the weak layers together and beat them into a strong section. My grandmother says when we all work well together, our rhythms are the music of Tonga. Now, using tapioca, we glue the strips side to side and end to end until we have large tapa sheets. And by gluing as many as 7 to 10 layers on top of each other, we can make thick, strong cloth. When this piece is finished, it will be as big as the piece my mother is making for Fanny's wedding. Tomorrow is Saturday, and Adelaide and I will do the vegetable shopping in Nuku'alofa. And afterwards, we'll help my mom at the special craft market for the tour boat that comes each week from Australia.
Now, Miss Yanepo, Koya, he only no like you, me Africa, and my queen.
Adelaide and I are very excited that we saw the King and Queen. I've decided to try making a tapa present all by myself for my cousin's wedding and to take the design from this pattern of the royal crest. My mother thinks it's a wonderful idea and says my choice is good. It's small, but intricate and challenging. And tomorrow, she'll help me make some new tapa for my gift. Everything we use in tapa making grows here on the island, and the dye I'll use comes from this coca tree. Most tapa pieces are made from raised patterns like this royal crest. My mother says it's important to press through every line because as we glue on more layers to strengthen the cloth, we want the final pattern to come through clearly. By the time I'm finished, my cousin's present will be 3 or 4 layers thick. My mother says the pattern looks good, and I'm very pleased. Now I must let the color and the glue dry. Then the design will be ready for highlighting with the black dye. This morning I had an idea, and my mother and father liked it. I've written a wedding announcement for my cousin Fanny to be read over the Tonga radio station.
Popa kita la manu, kete ko sililo mo fane to miki ki have luloto. O fa ki kawe eki he fo family mi ha bagatolo.
My cousin's wedding is tomorrow, and I should be finished in time. Our school holidays begin at noon, and I'll have the rest of the day to finish it. Finally, it's ready, and I think it looks good. It's a beautiful wedding, and after the ceremony, there'll be the present giving, then dancing and feasting late into the night. Weddings are very formal occasions in Tonga, and so is the present-giving ceremony. A special official, the matapule, announces each person who gives a gift. But I'm too shy, and I've put my tapa gift inside my mother's, so she can give it to my cousin and her new husband along with her own gift. During the ceremony, they can't show any reaction to individual gifts, although when they find mine, I'm sure they'll like it.
Well, that was kind of great. Yeah, that series is really awesome. Kind of capturing some of the world cultures and how things were in 1980, 81. Tonga, of course, has been in the news a lot. They showed up in the Y2K documentary that I saw on HBO Max, Y2K Time Bomb, which I recommend. It's really great. We actually helped with it. We digitized some stuff for them and provided some stock footage. But anyways, Tonga, of course, was the first place to celebrate Y2K, and so they were kind of looking to see what was going to happen to all the computers on Tonga to see if the infrastructure was going to shut down, which it did not. Then also the other thing with Tonga is the top level domain .to that you see with some of your web URLs. TO is Tonga. So supposedly Tonga is making money off this, and I could get an avgeeks.to for $30 a month. Or I'm sorry, $30 a year if I wanted to pursue that, which I don't know. I don't know if I care. And the other thing is some people mentioned the fact that they have a problem with obesity. So I guarantee you that their bodies are not used to all the outside junk food that has been coming in. And so they probably didn't do well. I think a lot of Native people, when they're confronted with the Western snack foods, don't fare well with that. And finally, I think Tonga's listed as the third country that is potentially endangered by climate change because of the rising sea levels, because of the types of storms that they get that kind of knocks out their country, and also tsunamis. They had some tsunamis a couple of years ago because of earthquakes and volcanoes at nearby islands. So Tonga in the news. Who'd have thought it? Thanks so much for tuning in today. Very much appreciate you dealing with my occasional cough. So I'm going to say, like, this week, so yesterday I was not here. I did pre-recorded show. Well, Thursday I'm also not going to be here because I'm doing a screening at NC State for some film studies students, some intro to film studies students. So these are brand new eyeballs who've never seen anything like this before. I'm going to blow their minds. We're going to bring a projector in. It's going to be fun. Then Friday, I'm going to go visit my dad for his birthday in Locust, North Carolina. So I will pre-record both of those shows. But I am planning on being here tomorrow. Who knows what can happen, but I'm planning on being here tomorrow. So thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks for watching all the Vicks cough suppressant and cough drop commercials yesterday. That was actually pretty great to put those together and watch how cough drops have changed over a period of time. I guess I could have put some Hall's mentholyptus commercials in there too that I have in my collection, but I thought, no, we'll just do it all the Vicks. And that was a project we digitized for Duke University's AdViews project. But if you like what you saw, hit the thumbs up. We like it. And also subscribe and other things. So I sometimes talk about this and gripe about it, but the revenue that we make from ads from people watching YouTube has dropped by a third to a third. I'm happy to get whatever we get. It's really not why we do what we do, but it does help offset the rental of the storage units and pay for things like Sharpies or a roll of stamps. But another way you can support us is just by doing those social media things to share who we are and what we do, because maybe that will trick the algorithm into thinking that we're popular and should share it with more people, because that's what's happening. Ultimately, the numbers aren't there because YouTube's just not bringing it up to people like it did a couple of months ago, which I don't know why that is. But if you'd like to financially support us, you can go to ko-fi.com/avgeeks, buy some coffee, which we will drink, or go to patreon.com/avgeeks. That's another way to support us. But just showing up every day and reading your comments, and I appreciate your well-wishing, and we'll be back again tomorrow. Everybody take care and have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we'll see you soon. Bye.